My name is Gabbie, and my world is about 400 square feet of beige carpet and white walls. It's not much, but it's quiet. From my desk, I can see the single window that looks out onto a brick wall. Perfect. No people, no surprises, no chaotic variables. I work from home, of course. I'm a data analyst for a company I've never seen, interacting with coworkers I only know by their email addresses. It's a clean, sterile existence, a meticulously constructed quarantine zone, and I've built it that way on purpose. Most people my age are out there, living, building careers, falling in love, making friends. I'm building firewalls, not for my computer, but for my head. My life is a collection of routines designed to keep everyone and everything at arm's length. Groceries are delivered. Packages are left at the door. The highlight of my week is a new herbal tea arriving in the mail. Its scent of chamomile and lavender, a soft, muted yellow in an otherwise colorless world. It sounds pathetic, I know, but for me, loneliness is the only thing that keeps me safe. Or sane. I'm not sure which anymore. All this work, all this isolation, it's all for one thing: to save enough money to get away. Not just from this city, but from the monster that lives behind my eyes. I've spent years researching fringe scientists, forgotten folklore, and dusty medical journals from the turn of the century. I think I finally found someone. A specialist in parapsychological phenomena in a quiet corner of Vermont who might be able to help, who might be able to offer a cure. That's the goal, the only goal, to finally be alone in my own head. It started when I was 6. Just flashes at first. A bloody knee on the playground a second before my friend Tommy tripped and skinned it. A shattered glass on the kitchen floor moments before my mom dropped it. My parents called it a vivid imagination. Then the flashes got worse. They became stories, little horror movies playing without my permission, projected onto the back of my eyelids. I'd see a neighbor I waved to every morning, and suddenly I'd be watching him slump over his steering wheel in a traffic jam, chest tight, gasping for air that wouldn't come. The worst part wasn't just seeing it. It was feeling it. I'd feel the sudden crushing panic, the radiating pain in his left arm, the dizzying fade to black. I don't just see how people die, I get the encore performance of their final terrifying moments, the echo of their soul's departure. You can't build a life on that. You can't hold someone's hand knowing you might suddenly see it mangled in a car wreck. You can't look into someone's eyes and fall in love when you might, at any moment, see the light go out of them for good. Every potential friend is a ticking time bomb, a future tragedy I'm forced to preview. So I chose silence. I chose solitude. This curse, this ghost in my head, thrives on connection. It takes the one thing I, as a deeply empathetic person, want most and turns it into a weapon against me. But I can't accept that. I won't. I've been a prisoner for 21 years. It's time to find the key. It has to be. Because I don't know how much longer I can survive the ending of every story. My fortress was breached on a Tuesday. It started with the sound I hadn't heard in years, a friendly, confident knock on my door. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, percussive terror. I froze, staring at the peephole as if it were the eye of a predator. On the other side was a man with kind eyes and a crooked smile, holding a ridiculously oversized cactus. He introduced himself through the door. His name was Alex, his new next-door neighbor. He'd gotten a package of mine by mistake. For a week, I managed to avoid him, my movements timed his comings and goings, a silent, paranoid dance in the hallway. but he was persistent in a gentle way I wasn't prepared for. A cheerful morning in the hall that I'd pretend not to hear. The rich, warm scent of freshly brewed coffee from his apartment filling the corridor, a smell that was a comforting deep brown. He was a crock of sunlight under my door, and the dread was suffocating. I wasn't afraid of him. I was afraid of the hope he represented, the warmth I craved and knew I couldn't have. The dam finally broke over a dropped bag of groceries. I was fumbling with my keys, my arms overloaded, when the thin paper bag tore, sending a cascade of oranges rolling across the drab hallway carpet. Before I could protest, he was there, his door swinging open, laughing softly as he helped me gather them. "Looks like you could use a hand," he said, his smile genuine and disarming. We talked for just a minute. He was a graphic diviner, loved old movies, and had a terrible track record with houseplants, hence the ridiculously resilient cactus. It was so normal it hurt. Then, as he handed me the last orange, his fingers brushed against mine, and the world ended. It wasn't a flash this time, it was an immersion. The smell of rain-slicked asphalt and gasoline filled my lungs. The sound of screeching tires and shattering glass exploded in my ears, so loud it felt like my skull would crack. I saw the world through his eyes, spinning violently as the car tumbled, the dashboard rushing up to meet his face with a sickening crunch of bone and metal. I felt the sharp, blinding pain in his chest as the steering column broke his ribs, the hot, wet sensation of blood filling his mouth, the final panic thought of a promise he couldn't keep to someone named Sarah. Then darkness. I gasped, snatching my hand back as if I'd been burned. I was back in the hallway, the smell of oranges and dust replacing the gasoline. Alex was looking at me, his smile fading into concern. "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I couldn't speak. I just stared at his kind, oblivious face, the face I had just seen destroyed, and shoved the rest of the groceries into my apartment, slamming and locking the door without a word. For an hour, I slid down the back of my door, my body trembling, trying to scrub the vision from my mind. Part of me screamed to deny it. It was a mistake, a misfire, just my curse being cruel for the sake of cruelty. But I knew better. I'd never been wrong before. This was his future, a short, brutal, and unavoidable one. I was staring at two impossible choices. Let this kind man walk unknowingly to his death, or try to save him and be labeled a lunatic, shattering the fragile, anonymous peace I'd built. The denial crumbled, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. I couldn't just do nothing. This was the final push. I stumbled to my laptop, my hands still shaking, and pulled up the email for the specialist, the one I'd been too afraid to contact. As my fingers hovered over the keyboard, the air in my apartment dropped. A deep, unnatural cold seeped into the room, raising goosebumps on my arms. The low hum of my computer speakers warped into a whispering static, like a voice trying to form words just at the edge of my hearing. Then, in the reflection on the dark screen, I saw it. Just for a second, a tall, distorted shadow standing behind me where nothing should be. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was tall, thin, and it felt pleased. It was then that I understood, with a dawning, gut-wrenching horror. The thing in my head wasn't just a part of me. It wasn't a faulty circuit. It was a passenger, and it was hungry. The email to the specialist remained a blinking cursor in a blank draft. What could I even say?
Dear Dr. Alistair, I think a ghost lives in my head and it's feeding on my despair. Also, my new neighbor is going to die. I'd be dismissed as a prank or worse, a case for psychiatric intervention. The vision of Alex, the feeling of the shadow, they were connected. The answers weren't in some distant academic's inbox. They were buried in the one place I had spent my entire adult life avoiding. My childhood home. The idea settled in my stomach like a block of ice. I had always blamed my condition on a faulty wire in my brain, a repressed trauma I couldn't access. But if I was truly honest with myself, the strange cold, the whispering static, the feeling of being watched, it had all been stronger there, in that house, with my mother.
The drive back was a journey through a decaying photograph. The town looked the same, just sadder. My mother's house stood at the end of a cul-de-sac, a cluttered, oppressive 2-story filled with secrets. She greeted me with the same detached surprise she always did. Her home smelled of dust and dried herbs, a cloying scent that clung to the back of my throat. I told her everything. About the visions, about Alex, about the shadow. I needed to know what happened to me when I was a kid. She listened with a placid, unnerving calm. "Gabriella," she said, her voice smooth as riverstone. "Your imagination has always been your greatest affliction. You've built a prison for yourself, and now you're hallucinating inmates." Her denial was too quick, too polished. "The attic," I said, my voice firm. "I want to go in the attic." Her face changed, a flash of cold, raw panic. "Don't be ridiculous," she snapped. "It's not safe." Her fear was the confirmation I needed. I pushed past her. She grabbed my arm. "I forbid it, Gabriella." The fight was on, a clumsy, desperate struggle. I yanked the cord and the old wooden ladder groaned down, releasing a puff of ancient, stale air. The attic was a tomb, suffocatingly hot, smelling of brittle paper and dead things. "There's nothing for you here," my mother shrieked from the bottom of the ladder. The whispering static was back, louder now. A chorus of hushed, sibilant voices slithering in my ears. The air grew colder. I started tearing into boxes, old clothes, moth-eaten blankets. Then I saw it. Tucked away under old curtains was a heavy, dark wood trunk. It was locked. "That's just old linens," she yelled, starting to climb the ladder. I found a broken metal rod and jammed it into the lock. I twisted and pulled until with a loud crack, the latch gave way. I threw open the lid. On top lay a small, ornate wooden box. Inside, nestled on faded black velvet, were things that made no sense. A small, wickedly sharp silver knife, a bundle of dried blackish herbs, and a photograph. A faded Polaroid of a little girl with wide, terrified eyes sitting cross-legged in the center of a complex chalk circle on the floor. The little girl was me. My breath hitched. My world tilted. Beneath the photo was a book, bound in cracked, dark leather. I opened it. The pages were filled with my mother's elegant, spidery handwriting in a language I didn't recognize. There were diagrams, constellations, and complex overlapping circles, just like the one in the photograph. Then I saw it. A page with a diagram that was sickeningly familiar. A human silhouette. And hovering right behind it, a tall, thin, distorted shadow. My name, Gabriella, was written over and over in the margins.
The static in my ears resolved into a single, triumphant whisper, a voice that was not my own, but was coming from inside my head. Oracle. I looked up from the page and met my mother's eyes as she reached the top of the attic. All the panic was gone from her face, replaced with a look of cold, terrifying pride. "It wasn't a curse, Gabriella," she said, her voice dripping with a reverence that made my blood run cold. "It was an attunement, a gift. I bound a sorrowful seer to you, a guide to the final moments. I made you a sacred vessel, an Oracle of Mortis." She took a step closer, her hand outstretched. "I made you powerful." The horror was absolute. It wasn't an illness. It wasn't trauma. It was a sacrifice. My mother had taken my life, my mind, my hope for connection, and offered it all up to some dark, unknowable thing for power. The passenger in my head wasn't an intruder. It had been invited in. My greatest fear, that my curse was a barrier to connection, was a lie. The ultimate connection, the one between a mother and child, was the very thing that had damned me.
I don't remember leaving the house. I remember the sensation of the world being made of glass, and I was the only thing that was real. The drive back to my apartment was silent, but my head was screaming. The passenger was no longer hiding. It was present, a constant cold spot in my soul, a hum of static beneath my thoughts. The horror of what my mother had done was so vast, so monstrous, that it broke something inside me. The part that hoped, the part that fought, the part that believed I could ever be free. I was 7 years old again, sitting terrified in a chalk circle while my own mother chanted in a language I couldn't understand, welcoming a monster into my eyes. My life hadn't been a struggle against a curse. It had been the slow, agonizing fulfillment of a ritual. My defining trauma was never about seeing death. It was about the helplessness that came with it, the absolute, soul-crushing inability to stop the inevitable, to save the people I might have cared for. Now I understand. That helplessness wasn't a side effect of the curse, it was the entire point. The sorrowful seer, my eternal passenger, doesn't just show me death. It feeds on the despair that knowledge creates. It savors the exquisite agony of a gentle, empathetic soul being forced to watch the brutal end of a life it cannot save. My mother didn't just give me a ghost, she turned my own empathy into its personal banquet. I am back in my 400 square foot world, but it's no longer a fortress. It's an altar. The beige carpet and white walls are the pristine, sterile backdrop for the horror show that is now my existence. The silence is gone, replaced forever by the low, whispering static, the overture for the next vision. The escape I had been saving for, the cure I had been dreaming of, they all evaporated into nothing. There was no cure for this. There was no escape. This was not my fate. This was my purpose. I think of Alex, his kind eyes and crooked smile. The vision of his death plays in my mind, not as a flash, but on a constant, torturous loop. The screeching tires, the shattering glass, the final panicked thought, I see it, I feel it, I know the day, the time, the street corner. And I know I will do nothing, because that is my function now. I am not Gabbie, the data analyst who dreams of a quiet life. I am the Oracle of Mortis. I am the silent, helpless witness. The ghost in my head has what it wants, and it is always, always hungry.
Thank you so much for watching or listening. The things that go bump in the night are hungry for attention. By liking and subscribing, you're telling me you want more. You're helping me bring even more chilling tales and terrifying content to life.